What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Um, Happy Saturday night to everyone. Let's see. Can y'all hear me? Um, Someone let me know if y'all can hear me or not. Let me see. God, I don't know where the live chat is right now. I'm trying to figure out where the live chat is. Um, but anyways, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Dirty Bird Fly Through. Um, as I'm sure y'all have noticed, there has been a rebranding that has occurred on on the channel. A new name, new logo, kind of a new feeling, a new look heading into the season because it is a new time around here. And Dirty Bird Fly Through. Still all about the Falcons. Um, but it was time for a new name. It was time for a new feel, and I kind of wish that the first episode, the first live of the Dirty Bird Fly Through, were under better circumstances. But obviously we have to talk about something, and it's been something I've kind of been holding off on talking about due to the fact that we really haven't had too much information to actually discuss about it to where we can go with what is actually happening and move forward with it definitively. But I feel like enough time has passed to the point where, where I hope we will get more information at a later date. But obviously, we all know how the Falcons roll with telling us about injuries, and we can never get a straight answer from them right out of the gate. So it always seems like there has to be some nitpicking or really pushing at it to finally get the true answer, which I could talk about in a minute. But there's I think something that is obviously a very big concern for the organization right now, and we're going to jump right into it. On, I believe it was Wednesday, Kaleb McGary, the Falcons' right tackle, and now blindside blocker for Michael Penix Jr., has been injured. He went down in practice on Wednesday. He was carted off the field and immediately, rightfully so, kind of shook everyone up because we know Kaleb McGary, the development of him. I really think it goes to show why you don't give up on a player just because they come out and they need a little more development than some others. Because Kaleb McGary had a really rough start to his career, and it wasn't just a rough rookie year. It was a rough first 3 years of his career. His fifth year option was declined, and he was really heading into, I believe it was a 22 season, to where he really had to show something, or he was all but certainly gone, and his NFL career was probably down the drain. But he came out, and this is where I think you got to give Arthur Smith his credit. He did a good job with stabilizing this offensive line after years of it being the weakness of the team, the reason why Matt Ryan got beaten up at the end of his career here. Arthur Smith was able to stabilize this offensive line. He developed, it was became the core of developing a top running game in the league. And, even in the passing game, we saw improvements. We saw this offensive line turn from one of the worst in the league into, honestly, a top 10 unit. And the development of Kaleb McGary played a big part in that. Kaleb McGary has certainly improved over the course of the past few years and throughout his career. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to the Falcons coaching staff, but you also got to give a lot of credit to Kaleb McGary because he has really shown up and shown out compared to early in his career. I still, he's still not the best pass blocker. I think that's why from the start there have been some concerns about him being Penix's blind side, but I believe that he has developed into a good enough offensive lineman to where you could at least put the trust in him. You could put the trust in him and give him an opportunity to play a bigger part of a role, an even bigger role on this ball club. And he actually just got extended also. He just signed a 2 year, $30 million extension. If you were to have told me, or I think anyone else, after his rookie season or even a second season, that he was going to get a third contract here, I think we probably would have called you crazy. But that shows that you can't. Sometimes you just gotta trust the process with some of these players. And Kaleb McGary is one of those guys that he was really able to get things right throughout these past few years. He was able to develop into obviously a better run blocker and even polish up on some of his pass blocking technique, which has made him salvageable in that department also. So, listen, hearing that Kaleb McGary goes down is brutal enough. But the fact that he now has an increased importance in this football team due to him being the blindside blocker for Michael Penix and considering Michael Penix's injury history, this isn't just, listen, any injury to a starter is concerning. But this isn't just one of those injuries where, like, you can say, oh, we have a solid depth piece that can just come in, because it doesn't just take any depth piece. You got to have considerable good depth at the offensive line. Now, the Falcons do have swing tackle Storm Norton, who has proven to be a very capable blocker to fill in whenever a Kaleb McGary or someone else went down. The only issue is that Storm Norton himself got injured. We really didn't know much about it. We really didn't think it was that serious, but we just got news also the same day Kaleb McGary went down that Storm Norton actually just had surgery and he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, which we were not told by the Atlanta Falcons organization. We were told by Ian Rappaport. So there's a lot of. First of all, I can just rip into the Falcons organization. I'm going to. And a lot of people will say this is a Raheem Morris thing, and I certainly don't think you cut Raheem Morris any slack for it. But I think this is something higher than Raheem Morris, because it's not just under Raheem Morris that we've seen the Falcons not be transparent about injuries. We saw it under Arthur Smith. Y'all remember back in 2023 when Bijan was held out of a game against Tampa, apparently because he came down with some sort of illness the night before, and he really wasn't down to playing, and that cost the Falcons, I believe, like $25,000 when they were fined from the league office. So now, obviously, under Raheem Morris, we have definitely seen more egregious acts of lying from the organization or not total transparency. First thing was obviously the Kirk Cousins debacle we saw. Younghoe Koo, they weren't completely transparent about that. Jalen Walker has had some injury concerns that we really haven't gotten full transparency on either. Raheem Morris really kind of had to be nudged to tell us the full truth about it. And now we have, with Storm Norton, we did not know the full severity of his injury. And even now with Kaleb McGary, we don't really have an exact timeline on him. And it's been a couple days since the injury happened. Now, there might be a reason as to why we don't have a complete timeline on McGary, because of a report that came out, and I don't know how credible it is, or how if it's completely 100% accurate, but I will go ahead and tell y'all it in a second. But at this point, and this is why I've said I've really tried this off season after the debacle of how last season ended to give Raheem Morris another chance. I have concerns about Raheem Morris and the type of coach he is. He obviously doesn't have play calling duties. He really only has one job, which is to manage the overall operations of the team. And there have been times where there's certainly, I think, reason to concern about how well Raheem Morris can do that. And obviously, we saw it in terms of clock management. We also see it in terms of how they deal with injuries. And it's something that you can only defend someone so much before you got to call them out on their bullshit and you lose faith in them. And with how the Falcons have handled reporting injuries, it's a big call for concern. I think from all aspects of the organization, from Raheem Morris, but it doesn't just stop at Raheem Morris. It's got to go to Terry Fontenot also, because we saw this under Arthur Smith as well. But going back to Kaleb McGary, um, obviously he was carted off the field, and that immediately cited major concern. Now, in training camp, there are times where they literally just do that as a precaution because it could be a mile walk back to the locker room. So they do bring the card out just to keep the pressure off of that leg or off of that injury. But it seems like now, based off what we have heard from Raheem Morris and even other reporting, that this may not just be that Kaleb McGary will be missing time, which is obviously very critical for this team. So we heard, I believe, last night following the preseason game in Dallas, which I'll talk about how the preseason has gone and the some of the news that came about roster cuts later on. But we heard that Kaleb McGary will miss a significant amount of time from Raheem Morris, which basically insinuates he could very well start the year on IR. He will certainly not be ready for the beginning of the year and a significant amount of time. And now raises the question, well, how significant is it? Is it until the bye week, which the Falcons have an early bye week this year, week 5? Is it until maybe week 10? Or could it potentially be the whole 2025 season, which would be the worst case scenario for Kaleb McGary and maybe for the Falcons? Now, there was a report that came out, or a tweet that came out from um, at BK squared 7, otherwise known as Bro Talk, and he stated that, and I'm trying to find the tweet. He did this update. Kaleb McGary is now leaning towards having surgery on his knee, per source. Quote, he wants to do it. It's been a chronic issue since high school. Then said if surgery is done, this would likely end McGary's season. So, from reports that we have heard that are not in the Falcons organization, and honestly at this point, you can't trust the Falcons to give us a concrete update for a while. So, hearing this is it is pretty concerning, and I would hope that it's not true. I would hope now if this has been a chronic issue for Kaleb McGary since high school, this is certainly probably something that should have gotten done earlier. But you can also understand, it's kind of one of those things where if it ain't broke, or if you play through the pain, you play through the pain. But the fact that now Kaleb McGary is dealing with the injury to this knee that is now apparently coming out. It could have been a chronic issue since high school. It's very concerning. Now know how reliable this source is. Coming from Bro Talk, that is telling him this information. But if true, the Falcons, the Falcons very well may be screwed because this is one of the most important positions on this team in 2025, and as long as Michael Penix is the quarterback. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to be a successful ball club. You need, obviously, the quarterback. That's first and foremost. You need that one disruptor on the defensive side of the ball, and it really needs to be on the front. And you really also need your O line to stay intact. You need your O line to be healthy because they are the unit that is obviously the engine of everything on the offense. They allow for the offense to run smoothly. And Kaleb McGary is not just an important factor into this situation because he's Michael Penix's blindside, but also because of tendencies the Falcons have in the running game. The Falcons love running to the right side of the offensive line, and Chris Lyncham and Kaleb McGary have been a tandem for their entire career. They were both first round picks in 2019. The Falcons traded back up into the first round to get Kaleb McGary. And they have pretty much been together. Chris Lindstrom, the first game of his career, broke his leg and he missed like 8 weeks. And I think, every now and then, maybe like once, you know, maybe Caleb McGarry has missed like 2 or 3 weeks here and there. But for 90% of that time since then, since the start of their careers, they have been literally side by side to each other. They are attached to the hip to each other. Um, Drafted in the same draft class, play on the same side of the O line. They are yin and yang. They go together. So if Cale McGarry is done for the season, I think that also kind of raises a concern to could that affect Chris Lindstrom in some way? And Chris Lindstrom is, I believe, could very well be the best guard in the NFL. But, you know, consistency consistency is one of the most important aspects of the sport. And when there's a disruption, that that can cause issue. Now, from what we it sounds like, Storm Norton could be ready to go coming out of the bye week, which is week 6. The Falcons' first 4 games are at home versus Tampa, at Minnesota, which is a Sunday night game, at Carolina, at home versus Washington. And, I will say that is a test the first 4 games. That is not a easy stretch coming out. Now, I've also said that if the Falcons are opportunistic and they play to their potential, they could still, I think, get out to a pretty good start. But now, I think the outlook changes following this Caleb McGarry injury. I'm not saying that it's the season is over, but I also believe that the Falcons are really going to have to do something in order to not prevent this season from falling apart early on because this is an injury that could have major ramifications. Now, it sounds like the Falcons could potentially move Elijah Wilkinson into that right tackle position until Storm Norton comes back. It sounds like that is where they are leaning. I'm going to go ahead and say, based off what I've seen from Elijah Wilkinson when he was here in past years, that I don't feel confident in that. I cannot feel confident in that. Now, Michael Penix does have a considerably fast release. He doesn't hold on to the ball, but once again, it's a major injury concern. And also, the Falcons love to run to the right side of that offensive line. So, now I will say that I'm willing to put trust into Dwayne Ledford. He has proven to be the guy that has turned the course for this offensive line. He has been a very critical part in a lot of these guys' development. So I would trust that he could get things ready. And I think that he has earned that right to earn that trust. But I would not roll Elijah Wilkinson out as Michael Penix's blind side, even if it's just for 4 games. What I would do at this point is I would either A, find someone off the market, and you're not going to find someone that can come in and play to Kaleb McGary's level, the level that he has developed into playing at, which is honestly one of the better guards, one of the better tackles in the league. He's not the best, but he has turned into a pretty solid right tackle. But at least find someone that could be around a Storm Norton level, someone that can be serviceable. I don't think Wilkinson is that, at least as a right tackle. What I would do is I would either A, sign a right tackle, or B, Matthew Bergeron in college was actually more of a tackle. What I would do if you don't want to sign someone is I would move Matthew Bergeron into right tackle, and then if you want to roll with Elijah Wilkinson at all on this offensive line, then maybe I would feel okay with him filling in at left guard for 4 games. It wouldn't be ideal, but I would much rather see him at least play left guard than be Michael Penix's blind side. If he is Michael Penix's blind side, though, I'm going to be honest, it doesn't set well with me. I'm not going to say the season is over, but I think it decreases morale for myself and certainly for a lot of other people. So something is about to have to give, and the Falcons are really getting ready to show how thick their depth is and how much their depth can hold up with these injuries. Um, but I would either sign someone or I move Matthew Bergeron because I think even though it would be a shift at the NFL level, because of the fact that Matthew Bergeron has played the position, now it would certainly take some getting used to, and you would probably have to make that decision starting this week. But I would I would do it for 4 games. I don't honestly know what could be worse than that. I think as far as what the Falcons have in house right now, that might be the best call. But this Kaleb McGary injury is going to sting because I definitely think that at least for the beginning of the season, it changes the outlook, and it definitely it's going to cause for an increased sense of urgency from everyone. And now I think to where maybe you were looking at what could have been still maybe a considerably good start. Now it really turns into if you can just be 500 after those first 4 games, um, you'll probably you're probably pretty all right. But it's going to be tough. Now the season is not over. Um, and for all we know, Elijah Wilkinson could, maybe he could fill in and be pretty all right and hold his own. But at the same time, I just think that from what we've seen out of Elijah Wilkinson, and Elijah Wilkinson has been around this league for a minute, he's I don't really think we've seen too much, to be encouraged out of him. Now, as far as offensive linemen do go, they are that type of position to where typically if you're getting your name called, it's either getting called because you're out with injury or because you're getting your ass handed to you out on the field. The great offensive linemen, they never get their names called. So, if Elijah Wilkinson doesn't get his name called and he is out there starting, that means he's doing pretty all right. Um, but we're about to really see what the Falcons are made of, especially if Kaleb McGary, which it sounds like he is going to actually be out for a significant amount of time. We're getting ready to see what they're made of. Um, in other news, the Falcons played their final two preseason games. They lost 23-20 against the Titans last Friday night. Um, Quarterback Emory Jones was injured during that game, and just last night they did lose to the Cowboys 31-13 in Dallas. And I'm gonna say this. I'm not the person to freak out over preseason. I'm not the person to freak out over starters not even playing. Would it be ideal to give them a couple drives? Of course it would. But I don't think it's a necessity or a requirement, or I don't think it makes or breaks a team going to the playoffs. I even think, with this Caleb McGarry injury, yes, it definitely takes a hit to morale, but as long as you can right the ship early, that's really all that matters, because you don't need to be playing your best football in September. You don't want to be playing your worst football in September, but you also don't want to be playing your best football in September. You want to be playing your best football in December and in January. So maybe you could have a chance to play a game in February. You don't you can certain and that's why I say you can certainly be out of it by the end of September, but you ain't winning shit at the end of September. As long as you can ride the ship in September, that's really all that matters. Now, would it be ideal to get the starters out there and play some reps? Yes. But it's not a necessity, it's not a requirement. Um and the Falcons take preseason to give guys who are on the bubble an opportunity to either make their roster spot and earn their stripe, or they don't earn it and they get off this team. And the Falcons, now that they're over with the preseason and done and it's done with for another year, have started to make some cut downs as they are going to finalize their 53-man roster come Tuesday afternoon. And the Falcons made some cuts today. They made 12, including one notable cut. So this is all of who they released. They released Matthew Cindric, Ben DiNucci, who they just signed this week, Elijah Dotson, cornerback Lamar Jackson, Caleb Johnson, Nikola Kalinick, Nick Kubites, Jesse Matthews, Ronnie Perkins, Quincy Skinner, Josh Thompson, and most notable, free agency defensive lineman signing Morgan Fox. Now, I think what this tells us is that the Falcons are definitely putting a lot into their younger players. This now leaves David Onyemata as really the only real veteran presence on that defensive line. Because as of right now, he's really the only one who I believe has more than 3 years in the league. The rest of the defensive line is Zach Harrison, Brandon Dorless, Rukaroro. These are all guys entering year 2, year 3. And these are the guys that you're looking to get impact from. These are the guys that you're looking to take a step forward. So the Falcons are really, they are putting a lot into their future. They're going to give these guys an opportunity to step up. And we saw in the preseason some of these guys. We saw a Brandon Dorless make some plays in preseason. We saw Rukaroro we saw him out there in preseason. These are the guys that they are getting ready. So you want to talk about, well, the Falcons didn't play anybody. They did play some guys that you are going to see out there, and that is because they want to get them ready. They know that these guys have to step up this year on the defensive side of the ball. So there was that. We also saw guys like we saw Arnold Ebiketie out there. That is a guy that you definitely feel like has to produce this year. We saw Braylon Trice out there coming off of the injury he had in what was supposed to be his rookie year last year. So the Falcons are putting a lot of investments, and then obviously with Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., they're putting investment in their youth on the defensive side of the ball. They really might need it now with some of the injuries that are coming to the offense. They might need to see some guys on defense step up. You're going to need to see it regardless. Because I do believe that in order for the Falcons to really get to where they want to go this year, excuse me, you're going to have to see investment from that defensive side of the ball. Um, but now with the preseason over, we officially stand 2 weeks away. 2 weeks from tomorrow is week one versus Tampa. And that's going to be a very big game for the Falcons. And with where the Falcons are at right now, there's one thing for certain that's there's some uncertainty, but the Falcons are going to have to find answers quickly, and you have no reason to make any excuses because you got a very big game week one that is still going to happen. And you have some big games in your first 4 weeks. I would say all of them, to an extent, are big games. Minnesota, Michael Penix versus J.J. McCarthy. Carolina, that's a division game. Washington, that rematch from that game last year. Penix and Daniels. So they are all big games to an extent. So you cannot make any excuse for what is or what is not going to happen. That's why I say the Falcons, they need to find an answer to what is going to happen with their blindside position because it is very, very critical to the success of their team. Um, I didn't plan on this being a really long live tonight. So, some of y'all have been also watching the videos that I've been making, videos I've been putting out. Definitely going to be a mix of both this year. I'll upload some videos. Also going to go live sometimes. Probably will go live after games. And then a lot of the stuff during the week will probably be videos. But you may still see a live stream or two before a game. Um, I do know that I will be live next Sunday night, and I'm actually, trying to get some special guests on, um, because that's when we're going to do the record prediction. It's when we're going to, put our money where our mouth is, and call our shots on at least where I think the Falcons are going to go and where they're going to be in 2025, because it's a very big season for them. And I have a lot of opinions on where the Falcons could go. Um, but I'm gonna put a record on it next Sunday night officially. Um, but obviously And this was also kind of just a test run with some of the new software that I'm going to be using going forward with live streaming. And I feel like it's going pretty all right tonight. And definitely looking forward to growing the Dirty Bird fly through for you all being on this journey. Appreciate you all support, and as I always say, remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to share. The Cash App is down there if you want to support. You want to send. Listen, you just send $1. I don't care. Support is support at the end of the day. But I appreciate everyone for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.